I got interested in gardening when we have snow on the ground for 5 to 6 months, oftentimes a year. If you don't have an ecosystem around you, how can you cultivate one? Though it is a challenge, there are also a lot of advantages in terms of there being a rest time.
Yeah, it would be so nice to have 5 months of rest.
The situation has gotten even more intractable, it feels like, in many ways. So many more humans in this world that are doing good work.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Food Forest podcast. Today with us we have Kareen Erbe, who lives in Bozeman, Montana, United States. What's special about Bozeman and that it's 5 months out of the 12 months freezing temperatures, but apparently it's still possible to have a homestead. She lives on 3/4 of an acre and she's able to sustain herself. She has chickens, she has a food forest, and she had a lot of nice influence of permaculturists where she learned from, such as Jeff Lawton, Rosemary Morrow, Dave Jack. She also has a bachelor in environmental science, and she also met Vandana Shiva, also one of my heroes. Welcome to the podcast, Kareen. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
So, can you tell me a little bit more about the place you live in? Were you born in Bozeman?
I was not. I was actually born in Australia, but only spent 2 weeks there, and then I moved and grew up in Alberta, Canada. So I'm used to being in cold climates. Just moved a little bit south from Alberta into the United States.
And when I think about having 5 months of freezing temperatures, I'm always a bit scared of, okay, but if I'm going to plant a food forest here, what on earth will I be able to grow? How am I going to sustain myself? Can you tell me about what your journey was from being a child to being where you're now?
Yeah, kind of a bit of a circuitous route. And sometimes I wonder why I got interested in gardening when we have snow on the ground for 5 to 6 months, oftentimes a year. Even last June, it snowed on June 17th. So it's definitely a challenging place to grow food, but it can be done. And actually, food forests and perennial systems are one of the best ways to do that in many ways because we have such a challenging climate. But I grew up in Alberta, Canada, really strongly influenced and concerned about environmental issues. And that got me taking an environmental science degree. And then I went into some social justice and human rights work after spending time in Latin America. I wanted to learn Spanish.
That was in Guatemala, right?
Yes. Yeah, mostly in Guatemala.
Where in Guatemala?
It was in a displaced community that was displaced during the war. So it was down near the coast. They had been living in the mountains in the Ixil region of Guatemala. That was one of the hardest hit during the Civil War. And they moved and were relocated to the coast after the peace accords were signed. And so I was living in those indigenous communities.
Did you help there also with gardening already or mostly with other things?
No, at that time it was mostly a human rights role. Although looking back, that was, I think, the beginning of me looking at the impact of the global food system on poor communities in other countries, right? Where they moved to what had previously been a sugarcane plantation, and they moved from a subsistence life kind of onto the coastal region that they were more unfamiliar with, where then the men still had their milpas, but then also had to go and work elsewhere to get more money. And then you saw the introduction of processed foods into their diets and how they were kind of lamenting that in a way that they used to be growing, you could get some sugarcane that they would grow themselves, and that would be the sweet thing. Or, they would grow the corns and the beans and the staples for their diet up in the mountains. But living in a different environment on the coast, you could see kind of that impact on their lives. And so that was kind of the beginning of me looking, while still working in human rights, also getting a taste of the impact of what our lifestyle in the United States has on countries, especially in Latin America.
Can you quickly explain what a milpa is to our listener? Because not everybody knows that.
Is a cornfield. So just a field where they're growing corn since that is a staple of the kind of
And
Mayan
mostly,
indigenous diet.
and mostly also with the Three Sisters system, right? On milpas, they're like these little heaps.
Sometimes I think it depends. In my case, where I was living, they did not have the Three Sisters. It was more just straight corn. But yes, oftentimes the milpa is that Three Sisters, corn, beans, and squash. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So that planted a seed in your mind or soul by seeing that, and that already makes me think about permaculture.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when I was in human rights and social justice work, I spent a lot of time being against someone or something, looking at all the negative impacts that humans can have on the planet and just telling people about that without giving people alternatives or creative solutions. And I think that was when I started looking at the impact of globalization. It took me down the path of looking and studying with Vandana Shiva, taking a class that she offered at her school in India called Gandhi and Globalization, and looking at how we can relocalize economies. And that's when I first heard the term permaculture. And that really sparked a lot of interest in me because it was after taking an entire 4-year degree in environmental science, never did we focus on solutions. Right? Which I
Oh my
think is
God.
just ridiculous, right? And so it just made me realize why didn't I spend at least half of my degree looking at all of the beneficial things that humans are doing, all the regenerative things that we can be doing, right, to have a positive impact and to create solutions rather than stay in, well, this is the story of everything we've done wrong. That's pretty disempowering for people rather
Yeah.
than the story that you're telling and that many of us in the permaculture field are telling in terms of how we can have a significant impact and be growing food at the same time and connecting with the natural world. It's just a win-win-win
Yeah,
solution.
100%. I really can imagine how Vandana Shiva inspired you to go in a certain direction. I also interviewed her for my book SOS Save Our Soils, which has just launched a couple of days ago.
Wonderful.
And yeah, the nice thing with her is that I asked her, well, what if AI and robots take over everything and we don't need to work anymore? What are we going to do then as humans? That's like a giant philosophical question. And she answered, well, then we're gonna grow our own potatoes, and then we're gonna start gardening and gonna make pottery. I was like, okay, we're gonna go back to the essence.
Yeah, the
So
essence
why
of being
wait
human.
why wait until we have all this before doing that? So
Yeah,
love her.
I love it. Yeah, I think she and Satish Kumar, who also taught that course with her,
Oh, nice.
were really a turning point for me in terms of, oh, we can, as humans, we can do such amazing things, and we can get back to doing things with our hands that don't involve, texting or typing, that we can create beauty, we can create food, we can create community with our hands. And I think that's something that in my business and with my clients and students, I like to remind them, and just by inviting people into the garden as well.
Yeah, did Satish taught you the song? I
Prob-
see the beauty before me.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I haven't heard that for that. This was 22 years ago when I took this class, so it's been a
But he did?
while. Yes. Yeah, back
Oh my
then
God. Like
too.
the moment you say his name, I hear his voice singing that song
Yep.
because yeah,
Yeah.
I'm doing an event with him like in January in He's coming to Belgium and we're doing like a very small event together.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, he's such
Yeah,
a
he's
special
amazing.
person. Yeah. Yeah, and he's had such a beautiful influence in this world. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing with radical love,
Mhm.
if you look at that radical love, then that's such a powerful way of like when you say I was against a lot of things
Mhm.
before and then you went looking for solutions. That's also the radical love.
Yeah. 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 And I think it is staying with that, and especially now, right? The situation has gotten even more intractable, it feels like, in many ways. And yet the message of permaculture and of food forests and of growing food has also, gotten more popular. And so I think, if we can stay in that and stay in documenting, like, you have all of the great things that we are doing in our communities. I think that's where we need to be right now.
Can you quickly explain Gandhian philosophy? If you would explain that to somebody who's never heard about that before in one sentence, what would that be?
I think it would be about relocalizing economies. Gandhi's whole movement again, for independence from the British was about taking back the power, right? And relocalizing economies, spinning their own cotton, growing their own food, right? Recognizing how much the Indian people had and have, right, to give, rather than kind of that dependence on a colonial power. And I think that's something that we should all consider, right? The relocalization of our economies and our food systems especially is deeply empowering and almost necessary. We saw that during the pandemic, that a global food system is very brittle, it's very fragile, and that the local food systems and the regional food systems, especially in our, well, as an example, I only have Montana to as my personal experience, were the ones that could pivot very easily, right? Were the ones where there wasn't waste. They could find new places to put their surplus if they had it, and or use that food that they had to feed their communities. And I think that focusing on local, it used to be that Montana grew 70% of its food, and now it only grows 3%. And so
that's a huge difference.
It's huge, and what interrupted that was the industrial food system, right? And economies of scale and efficiencies and all of the stuff that we've seen happen on a global level as well. But even though we're in a cold climate, there's a lot of food that we can grow, both perennial food systems through food forests, but of course, the cattle industry is big here. The legume industry, chickpeas, lentils, that's really big here. Flour, grain, all of that can be grown in the state. So rather than exporting a lot of it like we do now, how can we keep it in the local economy?
Yeah. If you're into permaculture or food forestry, then a lot of the times you think, well, the best place to start a food forest is Florida, for example. If you're in the United States, or if you're in Europe, the Canary Islands, for example, because there you have an eternal growing season. It's also what Eric Tunsmeyer says, that if you have the chance, go and live there, because there you have the largest amount of perennials. But still, you chose to go to a place with 5 months of no growth. Can you explain me why the choice of that place?
Love. There you go. I met my husband, and he.
Voila, finding love. That's a good.
There you go. It all comes back to that. No, yeah, he was living. I was living in Denver, Colorado at the time, that has a much longer growing season, and had started gardens at rental properties there. Met my husband through some mutual work that we were doing, and he and his son were living in Montana, and so decided to make the move up here. Though it is a challenge, there are also a lot of advantages in terms of there being a rest time.
Yeah. Ooh, it would be so nice to have 5 months of rest.
Yeah. I mean, I do other things in those 5 months. I teach and do other things, but the opportunity, and of course I'm starting seeds, but you have, at least 2 to 3 solid months of not doing work outside. And I think there's an advantage to that. It's about the patterns of the season, where you go inward and you spend time in design, you spend time in dreaming, you spend time in reflecting back, you spend time reading more. So the season, it does mean that the season is crazy at this time of year, or especially in May. May is our big planting time. So it's just a different rhythm of life. And I do like the challenge, although I'll have to say, I have a friend of mine who runs the Caribbean Agroforestry Institute in Puerto Rico, and her banana trees grew, as tall as my pear trees. They grew as tall as my pear trees in 7 months, and my pear trees are like 7 years old. There's a big difference for sure in terms of the tropics versus. But I love my 4 seasons, even though winter in this climate is
yeah. And you can't go skiing in Puerto Rico, and I think it's only like 1 hour drive from a ski resort, or
It's
like a place where you can.
yeah, it's 20 minutes from here, the
Oh
closest
my
ski
God,
resort. So
what a luxury! So that's also a trade-off you wouldn't want to miss if you would go to Puerto Rico
yeah,
or Florida.
yeah,
Yeah, and even Eric Dunsmeyer, although he was a proponent of doing it in Florida, he also is living in Massachusetts right now.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
there
yeah,
are
which is
other.
also pretty challenging too. I mean, the one thing that I would say here that is probably more of the challenge than the length of the growing season is the lack of water.
Oh,
And so
is there a
really
lack of water?
we get 16 inches of rain a year, which in centimeters, I can't make the conversion right off the bat, but it's not a lot.
That's 16 inches a year. That's only 40 centimeters.
Yeah. So
That's 400
rainfall,
millimeters.
yeah.
Yeah.
We get snow during, we get a bunch of snow during the season, but during the actual growing season, we only get at the most 16 inches. In other parts of Montana, it might be as little as 11. And so you are dealing with a water issue.
Wow.
Right.
That's crazy. So wow, that's like double down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, your book, Save Our Soil, and also like why soil building and mulching and organic matter and all of that is so important, especially in this climate, because you want to, when it rains in May and part of June, you really want to capture as much of that moisture as possible in a food forest system. And even here, I don't end up watering. Despite the fact that we got so little water, I'm usually only watering in the food forest about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks at the most a season, because we have a lot of that water captured.
Yeah. And you didn't just create a nice garden for yourself. You created a garden to share with the world. It's called Broken Ground. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a bit more about what it is and also the meaning behind the name?
Yeah.
And the philosophy?
So Broken Ground is my business name, and I started my business in 2011, where I teach people in cold climates how to grow their own food and build a level of self-reliance. And so we have this cold climate permaculture demonstration site on this 3/4-acre suburban lot. So we have, large annual gardens, we have a pond and a greenhouse, and then this food forest that's about 1,000 square feet, roughly, with all sorts of different examples of what can be grown in a cold climate, which is quite a few different things. And we managed to grow a lot of our fruit for the season in that space. And so I treat that as a demonstration site. I do videos. I have a YouTube channel at Broken Ground, and I also have a newsletter and clients. And Broken Ground came from the poem by Wendell Berry of that same name. And so I think for me, that represents not only the ground that you have to minimally till, of course, but that, that a seed breaks through, right, in order to become a plant. It also, that word broken in there is a little bit to me about the broken world that we are in, and finding beauty, like Terry Tempest Williams says, finding beauty in a broken world.
And the brokenness.
And creating beauty in it and being an agent of creating beauty. And so I have a website, Broken Ground Permaculture, and I have all sorts of resources there and deal with clients both on a regional level in my area, but also nationwide and up in Canada in places in cold climates where.
Also in Scandinavia or not?
I haven't had any. I've had YouTube followers in Scandinavia, but no direct clients.
Would make sense. Yeah. I took the liberty to check out your garden via Google Street View, and it looks nice.
Yeah, you might not have the most recent the most recent iteration of it, but
I think it was 2024, so only 1 year old.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. So that food forest is in that back area, and we have about 11 or 12 fruit trees, countless berry bushes, and then, a bunch of natives in the front yard. as well. So a lot of food is produced in that space.
Yeah, because like the nice thing about Google Street View is that you can like check the history, and like in 2015 there was like nothing, just a lawn, and then in 2019 you saw like the first mulched areas with some little saplings you put in the ground, and then 2022 they're already nice flowering, and then 24 it's already much bigger. So
I should look at those. I haven't seen
yeah, you
those.
should do that. It's
sometimes
yeah, it's so cool.
I encourage my clients to take photos before and after, because I don't think it happens so gradually that you don't realize the transformation that has happened. So it's a good reminder.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I'm gonna because this podcast can be seen via YouTube for the people who are listening to it via Spotify, and I'll just share it here if that's okay for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
So this way people can also learn on how to do that. So now you see 2015.
Oh wow, yeah.
And then 2019, ta-da, a lot of mulch. That's like step number 1.
Yes, step number 1.
And then
soil
step
building.
and then like only 3 years later, ta-da, it's already pretty, with a lot of flowers.
Yeah.
And then if you go to 24, it's even bigger, but it was already in September.
Yeah, and that's my front yard. Native.
Yeah.
That's mostly native. So that's not the back food forest. I don't know if you can go down the street.
No, Big Brother isn't that good yet.
Darn it. Yeah, so it's like beyond that hedge. Darn it. Yeah. So that's my front yard, mostly native, drought tolerant. So last year we got a little bit more rain last year, and I only watered that area 3 times, which this climate is pretty phenomenal, just in terms of being able to create this beautiful pollinator habitat with only watering 3 times, when you have people watering their lawns every 3 or 4 times a week, which is just wasteful and not congruent with the climate that we have. Right, we're not meant to have lawns.
The only good reason to have lawns is to make tofu out of them. A lot of people don't know, but the grass is one of the richest crops you can grow proteins from, and you can like make tofu out of them. You can put it in the you can like kind of cook them and then coagulate it like you would do it with soybeans or with mulberry leaves or with nettles, the same thing. And then you can make like a leaf protein concentrate and make tofu out of lawn. So maybe we should teach that to all the lawn owners in the world.
Yes, I know. At least it would be useful in some way. I have an incredible contrast, because where the back area where my food forest is, I don't own between the fence line and the sidewalk, and they water that almost every day, and they're just growing lawn, and then they're mowing the lawn, and then they're watering it, and meanwhile I'm growing all this food right next to it, and I'm watering it once a week maybe, and get about 6 months of fresh fruit a year and many more months of dehydrated and frozen fruit. So it's really quite ironic. Oh, there's the mulch pile, the requisite mulch pile, you'll see as well.
Voila.
Let's see.
So
down the road.
I just wanted to show the people the manicured lawns.
Yes, that's exactly it. So I don't own that between the fence and the sidewalk there. I don't own that. But then right next to it is the food forest. Oh yeah, so it is a recent photo. There you go. You can see kind of where the food forest is in the back there. I can send you as well a drone shot that I took.
Ah, super cool. Send us the link, then we're gonna put it in the show notes.
So there, you have kind of the back hedge and just that small area. But again, like that's what I encourage people is you can grow a lot in that in a very small area.
Yeah, that's so true. Question, let's say I want to move to Montana or Scandinavia or another cold place on this planet where it's 5 months of snow. What's like the biggest advice you would give to me?
Spend some time, of course, with the permaculture observation piece in mind. I think spend some time just observing your site, getting to know other people who grow in that area, getting to know who else, visiting local gardens, if there are any, understanding what grows well, going to nurseries, local nurseries and garden centers, if they are in the area, and just start to get to know the plants and get to know that climate. Take a lot of walks in the woods, understand how things grow, understand what native plants grow there, understand if indigenous peoples had been there before, what plants they used in that area. So spending that kind of year in observation and getting to know both the community of plants, but the community of people that are in that place. And then you go about, looking at actually designing or putting in a food forest or growing some of your own food, like getting to know your neighbors.
All right. So let's say I did all that.
Mm-hmm.
The snow is starting to melt. What's the first thing I do? So when does it start melting? There was snow in June, I heard.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Well, usually, most of it, that's unusual. That melts pretty quickly in June. That's kind of an event. But most of the snow is off the ground about mid-April.
All right.
And then if you had a design, when I talk to clients, one of the first things you want to do is do some sort of design on paper, at least in terms of where your fruit trees and berry bushes and nut trees are going to go, just to give you a bit of a skeleton of a design. Yeah. The herbaceous understory is not as important, right? But making sure that everything has enough space, because especially
you need to know where the big guys are going to be and then build further on those.
Exactly. And in a cold climate where you want to maximize light, right? And you don't want closed canopies like in the tropics, right? Because they get same amount of sun all year, right? In a cold climate, you just need to maximize that light, knowing that you want that full 8 hours of sunlight a day, full sun, 8 to 10 if you can. So once you identify that, then in April, end of April, we're usually putting in, if you're starting from scratch, you're putting in bare root fruit trees, which is that's when that's available.
Before going there, when we give a food forest design course, which we do a couple of times a year, online and offline, we teach people to, like, in temperate climates, to take the diameter of the tree and do it times 1.5. Would that be far enough where you live, or would you say diameter of the tree times 2?
In terms of the
spacing.
Spacing?
Yeah.
I just have, at the nursery or I have a guide that I use in terms of the height and spread. And then I give spacing, adequate space between things where there's at least 2 to 3 feet, 5 feet between the mature spread of each tree. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Okay, so it's more like a general rule of thumb you use, that have 3 to 5 feet between the mature width of the trees. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. We sometimes use this calculation tool that we say, okay, if it's like 30 feet diameter, then we have the spacing 30 times 1.5 is then like 45 feet. At the center of each tree, but it's
gotcha. Yeah. Oh, that's
it's just another way of looking at it. Yeah, but it's
totally.
It's the same result.
Yeah.
Más o menos.
Yeah. Maybe that's a little bit more spacing, and I think context matters in terms of what you're putting in and what plants. But yeah, I like that rule of thumb as well. But I'm usually, if I'm designing a food forest for people, I'm looking at the mature spread. Of course, it takes a while in this climate for those things to get to that mature spread, and then just planting accordingly. I think what I see most, and I'm glad you're teaching that too in your course, is people plant things too close together because things look so small when they first get them.
Yeah. Well, unless you go in the more syntropical way of farming, which we already also had some syntropical food foresters on the podcast already, and then you have more like a chop and drop system where you can put them very close together. But if you're in a cold climate, I don't think you can afford to chop and drop too much, right? Or can you?
Yeah, you can do some of that for sure, but I think temperate syntropic agriculture is more challenging for sure than tropical. I do have things like Siberian pea shrub, which is a nitrogen fixing shrub that I'll prune back and drop.
Okay.
I think it depends on your timeline. Again, like you said, I think if you do want to kind of get yield quicker, then putting in your fruit trees and berry bushes first and soil building from there, either sheet mulching, which is what I did, and brought in a bunch of compost, wood chip, and manure that was mostly free. So sourcing that. Again, context matters. I'm in a farming, ranching community, so I have those resources readily available.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't, then you might have to do something more like syntropic and or you're growing more of that fertility. I think what I like people to understand is always like, what is your situation and what access to resources do you have? What is your budget? Trying to source as much free stuff as you can so you're closing the loop on waste on a community-wide level, but also acknowledging that there is a certain amount of initial inputs that you might have to bring into the system if you want it to establish, especially in a cold climate, quicker.
Yeah. So you told me that you have the Siberian pea shrub or the Caragana arborescens. Are there other like plants that help you to create fertility that you use?
Yeah.
Or that you could use?
Yeah.
Which
so
ones?
Siberian pea shrub, I use gumi as well.
Okay, nice.
And
the Elaeagnus.
Yes. And then Amorpha fructicosa, the indigo bush, and then false indigo, Baptisia australis.
Okay.
And then I did seed. Initially, I seeded a lot of clover.
Yeah.
Both white Dutch and red clover. And then I did also have lupin as well.
Yeah. It had very deep roots.
Yeah. So those are some of the main, even in a cold climate, those are some of the main nitrogen fixing or soil building plants that I use.
Yeah. What are the main fruit bearing trees and shrubs you have?
Yeah. So we have pears, we have apples, we have plums, sour cherries. We can't do sweet cherries in this climate, although we can do them in other parts of Montana. So sour cherries, gooseberries, currants, josta berries, which is a cross between a currant and a gooseberry. Rhubarb, of course. Strawberries, raspberries. Those are
not bad.
Yeah,
it's already a nice start to get you going.
Yeah, can't do peaches, but in some other parts of Montana we can. But in our climate, not so much. So there is a lot. There's a lot available. Grapes, yes, yeah. I have some grapes that I use for juice and jam, and then I have some seedless grapes as well.
All right.
Yeah.
And have you tried pawpaws?
They're I think a little bit. I haven't tried pawpaws because that's a zone 5 usually. It's one hardiness zone warmer. Yeah. I've tried mulberries, but they have died even though it says zone 4. I think I'm just a little too cold. Arctic kiwis have not. I've tried them. They haven't worked either. I think it is some of the stuff I it's not a huge investment to try it, but they die. They're annual plants here.
Yeah, that's expensive.
Yes, exactly. Over time, it's just not going to work. I was hopeful about mulberries because I think there's a zone 4 mulberry, but I'm right near the mountains, and so I'm in a bit of a cold sink, where I am in the city, and so it's just slightly colder, I think, than in other parts of the city. So those things might work.
Yeah, and even if you have, I believe that maybe if you find a better variety of mulberries, they might grow there, and you might not have mulberries themselves, but you can grow variety only for the leaves, and then you have also more proteins per acre than you would have with soy.
Yeah.
So the leaves are just so versatile and so nutritious that it's a shame that people don't use them more.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is one thing that is, I had a friend who used the sea buckthorn leaves as well in teas. Just people don't think about using leaves. Oh, I also grow American hazelnuts. That's one of the few nuts that we can grow here.
American hazelnuts. All right. Other nuts, or is that the only one?
That's the only one. I mean, I think technically you could grow something like a chestnut here, but again, the climate and the soil is not conducive. Again, I think like in permaculture, we like to say you'd be forcing function a little bit with that. Just like we can't grow blueberries here. I do grow, sorry, I forgot, one of the biggest berries that is starting to grow, people are starting to grow more and more here are honeyberries. Yeah, so I grow those, but we can't grow blueberries because our soils are too alkaline.
Yeah. And honeyberry, that's the Lonicera cerulea, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And very early, one of the most early fruits you can have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm eating those right now.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've been eating fruit probably for months.
Yeah. We our growing season is a bit longer than yours. So yeah, sea buckthorn probably grows good as well in your climate, right?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen those high up in the Alps, in the mountainous areas. It's crazy how versatile those are.
Yeah. The other few, I keep on forgetting all of these berries that we also grow, and is buffalo berries, which are native, and nitrogen fixing service berries, also known as June berries, and then choke cherries.
And roses?
Roses as well. Yep. I have a red lake rose that I grow, and then there are wild roses as well, the native roses too. So it is amazing sometimes I think about how much and why I push with a lot of my clients is that if they have space in addition to an annual garden to grow some of these perennials, because we do have a lot of perennial herbs that we can grow and, perennial fruit. I think people just think that because we're under snow for a lot of the year that we can't grow a lot, but there is a lot. And because it's almost as if everything in the perennial garden just gets a jump start on the season while we're still not outside in the garden. Things are starting to emerge in April, but you're not putting seeds in the ground until the end of April. So you're not seeing stuff in your outdoor garden, and you're not harvesting from your outdoor garden until probably end of May, So whereas you're pulling stuff and stuff is growing in your perennial food forest a lot sooner because that initial flush of light and warmth, everything just gets growing. My comfrey grows to, 4 to 5 feet, whereas in the tropics it stays really low, right? And it doesn't do the same. It doesn't have the same character.
Yeah, it brings me to my next question, which is, we already know that one of the advantages of having a cold climate food forest is that you can have time to rest. What are other advantages that you have that other food foresters in other parts of the country don't have?
Good question. Are there other advantages?
If there are any.
In our climate, especially because it's dry, we don't have a lot of disease issues.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
The frost kills them all.
Yeah, so there are some issues that we deal with, but not as much as in more humid climates. So that's not our main challenge, I would say. I'm not managing as many pests. There are pests, but just not nearly as many. I'd say those are probably the two big advantages. Admittedly, thank goodness for my greenhouse. I would like the growing season to be slightly longer.
Yeah. What do you grow in your greenhouse?
Mostly it's an annual greenhouse, so I'm growing greens, early season greens, and then growing out all of my tomato, pepper, and eggplant and basil and all of those seedlings that I put outside. And then it just extends the season on that in the fall end as well. But, there are several different in-ground greenhouses in this valley alone and in other parts of Montana where they are growing, more of a Mediterranean climate and growing figs and growing things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to grow here, just with good design.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but I just have a smaller greenhouse and didn't have those types of inputs to put in.
Yeah. No, of course. What do you see as the biggest victory you had of the of your career in food forestry and permaculture? What kind of risk did you ever take, or breakthrough you ever had, or turning point that you look back and say, wow, that was really something that defined my path?
Ooh, these are big questions, big philosophical questions.
Welcome to the Food Forest
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly. Let's see. I think the victory, or one of the things that I'm most proud of just in terms of my business and in terms of creating this demonstration site, is community building. So just like we are putting together a series of plants in a synergy that makes a food forest function, in terms of the soil building and the mycelial network and all of the plants that we're putting together in guilds, so to speak. I think that we need to be doing that more as communities as well.
Yeah.
Of people. People need to gather. They're craving opportunities to gather in person. And I think that through my business, I hold potlucks every couple months.
Oh,
I
cool.
do film nights during the winter, usually.
Cool.
And I hold tours both of my site and other people's sites. And people have come to look at that they look forward to it, mostly in order to connect with people. People come to my volunteer days that I have at my garden as a way to connect with people and as a way to connect with like-minded people. And so I think that one of the things that was a surprise to me was I naturally wanted to build community, but it's become a very fundamental part of what I see my mission is as a business. And a lot of my students, a lot of my alumni from my Resilient Homestead program that I teach come to these potlucks and gatherings. And so it just creates this really great sense of belonging and community around local food and around growing and gardening. And it's basically what we need to do is reinvent village culture because we've lost that.
Oh, so you were able to do that in a city like Bozeman?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I think that's where scale matters, right? I think that in bigger cities, you can become more anonymous, but Bozeman is still, although it's growing very quickly, you can still run into people grocery shopping, or you can run into them at the farmer's market, or you can, and there's still like a deep sense of community here. You can still know the mayor and know the city commissioners and have an impact on what your community looks like. And so I think it's encouraging people to gather, being with people and bringing, for me, it's about bringing culture back into food and food back into culture, which is how it has historically been, how indigenous communities have been, how reminding people that agriculture was never meant to be a solitary act. It was meant to be done in community. That is something that people, like a mindset shift that people are constantly having to make, where they're like, well, how am I going to do this all alone? I'm like, well, the point is that you shouldn't do it alone, because that's not how we did it before, right?
Beautiful.
So holding work parties, right, to get things done, to get a food forest in, to sheet mulch, or to get things planted, just encouraging people on that end of things to have, to build connections. Again, I love the permaculture definition, the art of creating beneficial relationships, right? Not only between plants and animals, but between plants and people, between people, just networking people and having people be more connected with one another, creating relational spaces, in other words, that aren't just about the food, right? They're about the people connecting. And I think when we look at what food forests are about, it's about resilience, right?
It's the food forest around the food forest.
Yeah. And I think it's that outer landscape resilience that we're always talking about in terms of soil building, in terms of plants, but it's also the inner resilience that we create if we're able to be with people who share our same values, if we're able to be in a space where people are doing positive things, And so I think that that's one of the victories that I see in my business, and kind of a byproduct that I didn't anticipate was going to be such an important part of what I do.
That's something to be very proud of, and I think that the world would really benefit of creating more of these village kind of relationships, even in big cities. Wow. Yeah, nice. Congratulations on that victory. Just a quick question. I used to listen to podcasts of Paul Wheaton, and if I'm not wrong, he's also from Montana, right? Is he living far from you?
He is. He is about 3.5 hours from where I am. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Have you ever met?
Yes. Yeah. And on a couple occasions, we've been in workshops together and or helped with different workshops. Yeah.
All right. Is he still very active in the permaculture scene?
He is. Yeah.
Okay.
But I have not seen him recently. But I think he's still doing stuff up at what he calls Wheaton Labs up near Missoula, so which is about 3 hours from here.
Yeah, all right. And from how far do people come to you to follow a course or
It depends. You know, my Resilient Homestead program, which is an online program, I've had people, participate as far as Yukon, Canada, so northern Canada, to Saskatchewan, to North Dakota, to even down in, I think I've had people in Texas once before, New Mexico, people that are at altitude. That are maybe more southern, but they're at altitude, so they're still growing in cold climates. So kind of a mixture of people from North America mostly that participate.
All right. Before we're gonna wrap up this podcast, I still have some personal questions for you, Kareen. If you would have a magic wand and you could really do anything with that wand, what would you do with it? There are no limitations.
Well, I do a few things. Can I do a few things, or I can just do one thing?
Well, if the first thing is you create the opportunity to do a few things, then you can. So go ahead.
I think we need to change the hearts and minds of reconnecting people with the natural world and the importance of it. So I think a lot of it is about mindset shifts. I think that a lot of the destruction and the extractive nature of what's happened is a mindset of dominance over the natural world and of extraction of resources and how this can serve me rather than how am I part of this community. And so I think instilling more respect, more humility in people, more reverence for the natural world, I think is where it starts. And then hopefully then you have people planting trees and ecosystems and really nesting themselves in the community of life that supports them.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would do.
Okay. Nice. And then a thing that a lot of people are struggling with at the moment, if you open a newspaper or watch the news, then you are bombarded with a lot of negativity, a lot of things going on in the world. I don't want to go into details about this, but how do you deal with fear and deal with negativity? What's your trick or your way of handling that, if you are able to handle it, of course?
Right. Exactly. If we are all able to do that. It's going out into the garden and being around community. When I come and teaching, when I teach a permaculture design course or a 3-day practicum, I come out of that experience inspired and understanding that there are so many more of us. Right? There are so many more of us than we know and that we know of. That's why telling stories and your documentary and your film and your book are so important, right? To remind people that there are so many more humans in this world that are doing good work. We just hear about all of the stuff that is going wrong. And it's not that we should turn a blind eye to what is happening, because it's all very real, the ecological crises, the climate crisis, the political crises. But I think what gives me a more agency is planting in the garden, converting that lawn to native pollinator habitat, right? Going and having a meal and sharing a potluck meal with people in my community who are also planting gardens, who are also doing good things. And so really staying in what Louis McNamara in her book Cultural Emergence has talked about, which is staying in your circle of influence rather than staying in your circle of concern, right? And just trying to expand that circle, because in that circle you have agency. But when you stay in your circle of concern, you don't. You feel like you can't have any kind of impact. And I think it
get
comes
more and more paralyzed.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, you're not going to deal with like these problems are too big for all of us. We need to understand that we as individuals cannot have that kind of the influence and impact that we want. But what we can do is we can band as communities.
Yes.
And have that influence, right?
Yes.
Just like Go ahead.
Makes me think about the quote from Margaret Mead that never underestimate what a small group of people can do to change the world, because it's in fact the only thing that has ever changed the world, a small group of people. But she didn't say like one person, it's like always a small group.
Yeah.
So
because you think about that with a tree too. A fruit tree alone in the middle of grass is not going to be as effective, as healthy. It won't thrive as much as a fruit tree within a food forest system.
Yeah.
And so it's like understanding that if you understand ecologically that a forest is more resilient than one, then it's the same with communities. What are your ecosystems of support? How do you bolster yourself? What are the shrubs and the mycelial network and the ground covers in your life? And if you don't have those, if you don't have an ecosystem around you, how can you cultivate one? Because we all need it in this time. Like that's gonna, right? Like a food forest builds biodiversity over time. It builds soil, it captures water, right? Same thing with our communities. If we have these ecosystems of support, we become more effective. We feel like we're more agents and have more ability to bring about change, right? In isolation, none of that happens. And I think
100%.
and that's the unfortunate thing about kind of the digital age, is that people feel like they're in community because they're online, but that is just not the same.
It's not the same. Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Kareen, because like me personally, I also have a super hectic life. I go and give keynotes all across the world, or go and visit clients all across the world. So I also travel a lot, and then I give a couple of times per year a food forest training, which is 1 week in one location, which is mostly like a super magical location, super nice surrounding, and then we're together with a group of, let's say, between 10 and 20 people, depending on which course. And then we really are in this bubble of, like you say, influence, of possibility. Nobody is watching the news. We are really busy with the development of food forest knowledge, of course, but also the development of ourselves, because we are really like connecting with each other. It's not really like planned or something. It's something that's happened. And of course, we facilitate that, not by doing it in your face either, but just like very natural. And at the end of the week, those people really became friends, became a support network. They really created a community, and they're like recharged and ready to go back to the real world. Finger quotes. Because of those moments of being recharged, it is possible to then go back to the world and help to install the new paradigm, which we so definitely need, and the new paradigm of working together with nature instead of fighting against it, and working together with each other instead of fighting against each other. So thank you for bringing that up. All right, we're going to wrap up this podcast. Kareen, are there any last words that you really want to tell to our listener?
Only that if you have an inkling towards permaculture or food forests, just a word of encouragement to go for it, and to both create a food forest and create community, and link up with people that are connected to growing food. It sustains you in so many ways beyond just the food growing. Yeah.
Well, thank you for these encouraging words, and I can only attest to that, and also say, don't think too much about it, but just do it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Food Forest podcast. As always, you can check the show notes, check also the links to what Kareen is up to, and see what else we all do, ranging from courses to trainings to designing. So thank you for listening, and see you next week.